This is the Rebellious Wellness Over 50 podcast for women over 50 who have a lot of living yet to do, who want to enjoy the ride for as long as they can in good health and with a sense of humor, maybe a little wine. I'm Gregory Ann Cox, and I believe it's time to bust the myth that aging equals decline in every area of life. Nonsense. I would say something else, but I'll keep it clean for now. Aging happens, but it doesn't have to ruin your life. You just need to get a little rebellious in your approach. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Rebellious Wellness Over 50. Today, my guest is Dr. David Billstrom, and we are going to talk autoimmune diseases, remedies for autoimmune, diagnosing autoimmune, and how important the gut is to our overall health. And we hear a lot about gut health, but I don't know about you listeners, but I kind of think like, I don't have heartburn. I don't have any problem. My gut must be healthy, but I think Dr. Billstrom has some other ideas. So Dr. Billstrom, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, so nice to be here.
Thank you. I'm going to give the listeners a little bit about your background. You are, among other things, an author, a speaker, a member of the American Academy of Integrative Medicine and American Academy of Medical Acupuncture. We love acupuncture. An advanced fellow in anti-aging, regenerative, and functional medicine, and you have a quadruple board certification. How do people get this all done? In functional and regenerative medicine, integrative medicine, physical medicine, and rehabilitation, and medical acupuncture. So I know that you're passionate about education, about importance of diagnosing and reversing, preventing autoimmune diseases using functional medicine, and I'm a big fan of functional medicine docs. Tell us what was your journey to this place where this became your specialty?
Well, originally, as a rehabilitation doctor, I specialized in spinal cord injury. So everybody was either paralyzed, waist down, neck down, with very complicated health issues to the point where we would become their primary care provider because something that an able-bodied, non-paralyzed person would, not think twice about could actually kill them. But also because they had so much health issues that medications couldn't help or the side effects was too profound. I really started looking for other things that could help them that I didn't learn about in my traditional training, with also the goal being, wouldn't it be lovely if it didn't have any side effects? Well, first I found acupuncture, and then acupuncture worked so unbelievably wonderfully. I go, oh my gosh, how did I get through my training without knowing this? But what else don't I know? And sure enough, there is a lot out there that we're just not taught in our traditional training. My son had, at a very young age, developed really terrible asthma and allergies. And I could pretty much get any young kid's asthma to go away with acupuncture. And sure enough, we did. But his allergies were so stubborn and nobody could help him. And it was just miserable. And I go, well, I'm going to have to kind of figure this out myself. And this is where I found integrative medicine. Well, actually, I'd already got integrated, more functional medicine. And wow, did he get better? And I go, this is really good stuff, and started doing it all the time. And then ultimately what got me towards the autoimmune disease was an article, very sad story in the New York Times written by an author who had this multi-year journey, just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And she went from doc to doc to doc. And eventually she was diagnosed with Sjogren's disease, just miserable, so bad, couldn't write anymore, basically. She couldn't work, she couldn't even get off the couch. And so she finally got diagnosed with what it was after all these years, but then nobody gave her any really good options other than immunosuppressant medications that she tried, didn't help. She kept getting worse and worse, which is sort of what you'd expect because the medicines kind of try to put a bit of a bandage on a couple symptoms, but they don't address the reason why the immune system became confused and started attacking the body in the first place. And you just keep getting worse and worse. And you end up with a second and a third and a fourth autoimmune disease. And I said, well, this is a story I hear all the time. But I can see where, we can reverse that already. And I said, well, this has got to change. We can't have all these women, particularly because 80% of people that get autoimmune disease are women. We can't have this happening. And autoimmune disease is becoming unbelievably common as well. And I said, well, somebody's got to do something about this. And okay, well, somebody's got to stand up.
Got to be you.
Time to go.
That's great. That's a great story. And it seems that almost everybody that has this passion and drive forward started with a personal story. Your son, then seeing this article reached you on some level. So let's talk. You threw in that more women than men get autoimmune disease. Can you tell me a little bit about why women might be more susceptible?
Yeah, there's really two main reasons. One has to do, I think, with the passion of yours, epigenetics, the things that turn on good genes, the things that turn off bad genes, or vice versa. And so we used to think that whatever genes we have in our cells tell the cells what to do was hardwired. Whatever we got good, bad, otherwise from parents, grandparents. But we realized that it's not the genes you have, it's which ones get turned on and turned off. And there's ever so many bad genes that try to make us feel sick. We got to turn those off. Ever so many good genes we got to turn on to make us feel healthy. Well, it turns out that there's so many bad genes on the X chromosome, and women get two copies in every cell in their body. Guys get one X, one Y. There's so many bad genes on the X chromosome that for women to be optimally healthy, she has to be able to shut down at least 80% of every gene on the entire second S chromosome in every cell in her body to be optimally healthy. And as you can imagine, that's like a
I'm
big
thinking that's a
job.
tall order.
But the body is so smart, it can do it.
Mm.
And um, and this is where if you get at these really big central mechanisms, including the gut is one of the biggest central mechanisms, you basically put your body in a position to start flipping off the bad, flipping on the good, every cell in your body. And even though Western, more traditional Western allopathic medicine makes prevention or disease reversal look incredibly complex and incredibly vague at the same time,
Yeah.
where it's kind of like, well, how do you prevent disease? How do you reverse chronic disease? Well, change how you eat and exercise. And it's like, well, that is very complicated. At the same time, it's like, well,
Yeah,
how?
yeah,
I mean, well,
yeah.
how do I exercise? How? But truly, the gut's the central mechanism. And then the other one, and this goes back to the gut as well, is a hormone imbalance called estrogen dominance, where
Mm.
women you get estrogen and progesterone, but you have too much estrogen compared to your progesterone. And this is a huge driver of immune system disruption, not only profoundly increasing cancer risk, but also profoundly increasing autoimmune disease risk. Uh, and between the estrogen dominance, that truly, if you look at the top 10 reasons why women die, estrogen dominance and what it causes, what diseases and health issues it causes, probably account for about 88% of all the
Wow.
reasons why women die. And so this is a big passion of ours, is to get the word out about how estrogen dominance shows itself before it turns into cancer, before it turns into autoimmune disease, so women can reverse and prevent the things that estrogen dominance drives that are really obvious things, but nobody puts them together with this hormone imbalance, especially do it and feel better long before they have to deal with cancer and autoimmune disease.
So I'm thinking estrogen dominance, which I had when I was still having a period.
Right.
So I would have, terrible periods, and then I got fibroids, and then I was hemorrhaging, and then I had my uterus taken out because it was an untenable situation. But I think that many women here that are in menopause won't think of estrogen as possibly being dominant because all we hear about is estrogenic decline. So is there a test that people take to see if they're estrogen dominant at a later age?
Yeah, and this is where, when it comes to functional medicine and how we're trying to change the way autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide, ideally getting some practitioner in every community knows how to do this, is, well, how do you do this with just the more traditional ways of doing, medicine? So every lab in every town could run the blood work looking for estrogen dominance. No problem. They do it all the time. Well, they didn't maybe do it all the time, but they can do it easily
Yeah.
when you order it. And so it's actually, easy blood test to run, covered by insurance. In my book, we even talk about the diagnostic codes that practitioners will use to justify it to insurance, so it's covered. And so it's really not complicated. It's just you got to know what to look for to find it, but then also, of course, know exactly how to turn it around, like you kind of talk about with the hormonal menstrual symptoms of estrogen dominance being things like bad flows, bad cramps, PMS, ovarian cysts, breast cysts, fibers, endometriosis. But also, and this is where it is unbelievably common, even the things I just mentioned are like, yeah, pretty much all, but also a change in the anatomy down there, like a hysterectomy or getting rid of one ovary, leaving everything else in. Whatever change in the anatomy goes down there, even getting your tubes tied changes the blood flow to the ovaries by 30%, will make it worse.
Mm.
Then, because estrogen revs and progesterone calms, it can also show up in women as excessive worry, anxiety, panic attacks, and not sleeping great.
Mm.
And so if you have this rev without calm, hormone, menstrual stuff, you automatically know you have the estrogen dominance. Now, you can, do the blood test and figure it out for sure. But then also, it's so important to turn this around because it's not going to be fun to have any of that stuff, of course.
No.
But because that's such a big driver of immune system disruption, that is a huge reason to take care of it long before it ever gets to then the autoimmune disease and this humongous increased risk of cancer, including women that have estrogen dominance before menopause have a 5.4 times greater risk of breast cancer before menopause.
Hmm.
Not a twice the risk, 3 times, 5.4, but also a 10 times greater risk of malignant cancers their whole life. This
Hmm.
is such a disruptor of that immune system. This is one reason why they kind of say, well, cancer is the flip side of the same coin that's autoimmune disease. But once again, it's not hard to diagnose, but it's also not hard to reverse. Really true. The body's so smart. If you kind of know the language the body speaks, it's not difficult to maintain health, but it's also not so difficult to reverse sort of these health issues that are already established, or put your body in a position to get this to go away. Now, to your point, as far as, well, maybe postmenopausal, what does estrogen have to do with it? Well, ideally, your body should make estrogen your whole life. Now,
Mhm.
ovaries make it until menopause, and then the ovaries say, okay, I've been doing this for like 3, 4 decades. Time for me to retire. And we go, okay, you earned your retirement. But then what has to happen is the adrenal hormones, such as DHEA, pregnenolone, these kind of other hormones that are produced, convert in your own cells, ideally, to things like estrogens, progesterone, testosterone. The cells do the work because you want to make like estradiol, they call it the good estrogen. You want to make estradiol your whole life because it keeps away heart attacks, keeps away strokes, great for the eyes. So it keeps away cataracts and macular degeneration, keeps away osteoporosis. Your gut needs estradiol your whole life. And also it keeps away fine lines and wrinkles in your skin. It's like every cell in the body just loves this estradiol, but you have to be able to make it your whole life. And this is kind of where estrogen dominance comes from. Well, you make healthy new estrogens that get rid of inflammation, keep away disease. But once it's been in your system circulating for a little bit, it gets dinged, gets beat up. Now it becomes irritating and toxic to the system. You have to be able to run your detox pathways, dump toxic old estrogens into your gut, and then poop them in the toilet. Well, this is where you get a messed up gut. And you can hear a lot of people talk about leaky gut.
Mhm.
Leaky gut drives a lot of issues, but also these old toxic estrogens that hopefully you have the right vitamins to run your detox pathways, or are eating your cruciferous vegetables all the time to detox, right?
Love my broccoli.
Oh my goodness, broccoli. Get them into the gut and then poop in the toilet. But you have the disrupted gut, or you're not pooping every day, or both. Well, they reactivate and reabsorb back into the system, accumulating these old toxic estrogens. Even if you're not making enough of the good healthy stuff, you may be accumulating the old toxic stuff, driving estrogen levels up. And then because it's so important to manage stress, it's so important to get the stress hormone cortisol to stay in the calm mode. When it gets stuck in the stress mode, whether it's because of some physical things like vitamin deficiencies, hormone imbalances, these infections that drive chronic disease, or emotional stress, spiritual stress, cortisol gets kicked up into the stress mode. And the first hormone that gets deficient because of that is progesterone. So you can get this double whammy where you may not have enough progesterone to create calm. Thus, you may be a worrier, more anxious than you want to be. You can't sleep. You get panic attacks, these kind of things. Well, you pretty much know you don't have enough progesterone, but also you may not be able to get rid of these old toxic estrogens. And here is this estrogen dominance, even after menopause.
Hmm. And let's talk about the gut for a minute as it relates to immune health.
Please.
If you can take us lay people through that, you talked about pathways, metabolic pathways, everything is connected to everything else. I'll
Yes.
start there. And yet all of a sudden in the past, I don't know, 5-7 years, gut health, microbiome has become like the it thing to take care of. And then there's conversations about how it links to immunity. But I think to most people, including myself, I can't make that connection. I know if I eat well, I feel better, my body does better, but there seems to be more science to that than that.
Yeah, and so you're right. The intestinal microbiome is sort of this super central mechanism that when it's off, it creates all these different health issues. And these are the things that then drive chronic disease, and including, you're right, everything is connected. So, one thing to kind of think about, well, if you get all this stuff going on at the same time, well, you go, well, what's causing it? Well, it makes it super easy because the only way a whole bunch of stuff can be off at the same time is because these really big super central mechanisms have gotten thrown off but then you fix them, everything can get better all at the same time, including, so many women come in and go, well, I got a leaky bladder. I just part of getting old, or I got a leaky bladder because I've had 5 kids. I go, no, 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 no. No, the body's too smart to let you feel old at 45, 55, age related to at least 90, because epigenetically, we should be able to keep our good genes turned on, our bad genes turned off at least until 90 and feel great. But there's this where this gut is such a central mechanism. Now, one of the big connections with the immune system is that 80% of the immune system actually surrounds the gut. So any immune system stuff, whether it's the autoimmune disease, allergies, asthma, eczema, which are the overactive immune system issues, or the underactive immune system issues, which are infections, recurrent infections, cancer, and the infections that drive chronic disease, such as Epstein-Barr virus, herpes virus, 6 mycoplasma, these kind of guys. Whenever you see any of this stuff, you go, oh, what's going on with the gut? Because it's like, hey, the immune system's off, what's going on in the gut? But then again, you hear things like, well, the gut's a second brain. Well, if you start getting any kind of brainy stuff, you go, okay, what's going on with the gut? And then if you see any skin stuff, you go, so what's going on with the gut? Because there's such a big skin gut connection. Actually, on Good Morning America, I can't believe I heard it, but there's a dermatologist on who was talking about skin care for women. And she goes, well, the gut skin connection is profound. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I can't believe it. It's on national television. But it all goes back to how this gut is a central mechanism, basically the intestinal microbiome. So the things that drive immune system disruption, autoimmune disease, cancer, these kind of things, but also disease in general, because of the gut is, if the gut's off, well, you can't digest your food and get the nutrients out. Even if you're eating high nutrient content food, you may not be able to get those guys out of your food. You get vitamin deficient. When the gut's off, you can't balance your hormones. The whole hormone symphony, particularly in women, is so dependent on a healthy gut. When the gut's off, throws off the immune system, you get these infections that drive chronic disease. And we now know that any chronic health issue, no matter what it is, there is an infection that drives chronic disease as part of this. Thus, we really want to teach people how to get rid of these infections, and then you have such a healthy immune system, they stay away. When the gut's off, you can't get rid of toxins from the body. And whether it's toxic old estrogens or other toxic things, including a big reason why they think so many more people get autoimmune disease nowadays than they used to, as well as a huge reason why kids get so many more brain stuff and immune system stuff than ever before, is environmental toxins. We live in such a toxic world. They get in, and it's almost like, well, how can I avoid them? Well, it's almost like, well, you can't.
Yeah.
You do your best, but you can't. The big question is, well, can I get rid of them faster than they come in? And when you say, well, can I get rid of them faster than they come in? It's like, okay, can I run my detox pathways with the right nutrients, broccoli, and I get them in the gut? Can I actually get them out of my gut, poop in the toilet efficiently enough that they don't accumulate over time? And then when the gut's off, it has this big central mechanism impact on the immune system and all that goes with that.
So detoxing is very popular. I don't know how many TikTok videos there are, and I'm sure there are a million videos on doing some detox, like vinegar water with honey, or colonics. There's probably half a dozen you can name. Is it reasonable to assume that I could do a 3, 5, 7-day protocol and repair my gut, or at least detox the bad stuff? Or is this like you have to live in this way of being healthy?
Well, if you really fix the gut, you're really putting the body physics, fix everything. So you go, okay, well, I need to detox. I'm going to eat tons of broccoli because there's 14 different studies that say if I double my broccoli intake, I cut in half my chance of ever getting cancer. And you go like, oh, that is pretty cool, right? So I'm gonna run my detox pathways. Well, if you don't have a healthy gut and it stays leaky, this intestinal permeability disorder, it's just going to recycle right back into the system, and you never get rid of the darn stuff. So you really want to, now you try to work around that, like things like people talk about doing foot baths and these kind of things. Is you really want to fix the gut though, because then you naturally become a better detoxer. But then you start balancing your hormones. Then you fix the immune system. Then you fix the brain, and then you're fixing the skin. You're kind of doing it all at the same time. Now, down the line, if you need a little extra help detoxing, you can always go that route. But truly, if you get the gut really healthy, you just naturally become a really good detoxer. Get rid of these old toxic estrogens, get rid of all these toxic things that have kind of built up in your system. But then now you have this foundational health of a healthy gut, healthy immune system. And this is a really great way than to stay healthy. And if you just detox, but you don't fix the reason why you're a bad detoxer, it's just going to accumulate again over time.
Okay, so do you have a suggestion, a protocol for living a gut healthy lifestyle besides broccoli?
Yeah. So a real big central mechanism in gut ill health and ill health in general is the vitamin D receptors in the gut become resistant to vitamin D. And so many people hear about vitamin D, there's receptors for vitamin D, every cell in the body. Vitamin D is uber important, including, studies that say that if a woman's vitamin D is above 60, she'll decrease her risk of ever getting breast cancer automatically by 82%. Um, so it's really great. And you want to get vitamin D more like 70 to 90. So even 60 is not right. A woman's vitamin D is above 50 during pregnancy. She'll cut the risk of her child ever getting multiple sclerosis in half.
Wow.
All these really cool studies, but you have to have the vitamin D receptors sensitive so that
Mhm.
the vitamin D can attach and do the work. Very much like insulin resistance that people hear a lot about, where you may have insulin made by your pancreas to control blood sugar, but if your receptors for insulin are resistant, you don't get the bang for effort, you go to diabetes. So it turns out these vitamin D receptors in the gut are so numerous compared to any other body part. That's one reason why vitamin D is so important for the gut, but also they have to be sensitive. They get resistant, this whole domino effect of terrible stuff happens. You fix it, this whole domino effect of great stuff happens. And it works by optimizing the intestinal microbiome. The lining of the gut stops making chemicals that create inflammation. The lining of the gut will actually make its own inflammation when you get the gut messed up. The lining of the gut starts making specific proteins called antimicrobial peptides to keep bad bugs down in the gut long term. So you maintain this lovely mix of good, bad bugs in the gut, intestinal microbiome. The original data from 2018 is like, wow, this is exactly what you want to do to fix all these autoimmune diseases of the gut, like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. Some people have like recurrent C. diff, recurrent H. pylori, all that kind of stuff. But then they go, wow, this seems like exactly what you probably want to do to fix everything. And they named a whole list of everything. And then 6 months later, they go, oh, another study came out. This is a nuclear weapon against diabetes and metabolic syndrome. So not just diabetes, insulin, blood sugar, but abnormal weight gain, helps you lose weight, cholesterol issues, triglyceride issues, heart attack and stroke risk. And then last year, here's this article in the Harvard Journal of Psychiatry that goes, well, if you can optimize the intestinal microbiome this way, and I look at that and go, that's what they talked about when they said if you fix vitamin D receptor resistance, well, you can use it to treat major depressive disorder. Another study came out, named something very similar to the intestinal microbiome's role in personality traits. You optimize the intestinal microbiome this way, well, you become more outgoing, more social, and it has such an impact on brain chemistry. And the way you fix it's kind of like, wow, this must be really complicated. I say, no, the body's too smart. So daily vitamin D, daily probiotics, which so many people are probably doing already, and then daily butyrate. Now, butyrate is maybe a name that just doesn't jump out for everybody, but butyrate is what they call a short chain fatty acid, and ideally, it's made by the good bacteria in the gut. So here's that gut connection. So the good bacteria in the gut make serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter. They make GABA, the calming neurotransmitter. They make melatonin, which regulates sleep-wake cycles, but also we know this is a great example of how these hormones, like estrogen, for example, are so much more important than getting credit for. People with higher melatonin levels, less cancer, less heart attacks, less stroke, less Alzheimer's, less osteoporosis. And you go, oh my goodness, can these good bacteria make anything more important?
Mhm.
Yes, they can. So butyrate is the third part of this, what we call the foundational triad of daily vitamin D, probiotic, and butyrate that has been identified as being able to reestablish the sensitivity of these vitamin D receptors in the gut so that vitamin D can do the job it was meant to do. But then because you're fixing the gut, central mechanism, intestinal microbiome is optimized. Well, then here's all these other great things, including butyrate itself. So usually on the poop test that gets done by functional medicine docs called digestive stool analyses, this butyrate is so important, they test for it. Easy test. You poop, you mail it off, your poop gets to travel, and they check for butyrate. It's so important. It's low. We go, oh, people low butyrate in the gut have increased risk of colon cancer. Well, over the last few years, we go like, oh my goodness, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Butyrate actually prevents cancer 5 different ways. It actually treats cancer 5 different ways. They're using it, they kind of patented a butyrate sort of analog, and they're using it to treat non-small cell lung cancer nowadays, a cancer that really we have no options for. Actually, the butyrate can get rid of cancer, including that one. Butyrate also is so important when it comes to energy homeostasis. The energy that comes in, the energy we burn, super important in preventing overweight, obesity, so important in reversing it. It's profoundly important for the brain. If you get an ischemic stroke, it helps the brain recover. Kids with cystic fibrosis, basically they're drowning on their own lung secretions. It can help that. The degenerative neurologic disease, Huntington's, chorea, it can help with that. And you go, oh my goodness, here's this foundational triad that fixes vitamin D receptor resistance. Well, that just fixes everything. Well, here's this butyrate that basically looks like, wow, it pretty much fixes everything. Well, butyrate almost exclusively works through epigenetics. And so this is where, these real big central mechanisms, the vitamin D receptor sensitivity, the butyrate, getting vitamin D perfect, managing stress, that cortisol stress hormone, creating calm in the body, whether it's fixing this disrupted gut, lack of butyrate, trying to manage stress, getting out in nature, getting in the garden, all this kind of stuff, create the calm. If you can get cortisol to reset in the calm mode, Harvard, big study out of Harvard 15 years ago, well, gosh, if you do like a few minutes of meditation every day, you just flip you fix the gut, you fix butyrate deficiency, well, you're flipping genes. And this is where, all this thing, gut stuff, and the stuff that drives chronic disease, but the stuff that reverses and prevents chronic disease, once again, kind of all ties into epigenetics and, flipping every good gene in every cell in your body the right way, turning off the bad genes that drive disease. It's just so profound for not only preventing chronic health issues, but really getting to what you got to do to actually reverse chronic disease and then maintain that beautiful health, at least until 90.
So, which brings me to the question of genetic testing. Dr. Jay Dunn, who's somebody I've interviewed and known for a while, has a company called My Happy Genes. And her experience, one of the reasons she started the company was she had depression for most of her life. Long story short, biochemical pathways. She discovered X, Y, and Z, had her genes done. She had a variation at the gene that makes it possible to absorb and use vitamin D. So once she got that fixed with a supplement upstream that worked on the other chemical pathways leading to that, she was then able to absorb the vitamin D, and voila, she was better, really that quick. So I'm just wondering, do you recommend gene testing to make sure that these biochemical pathways and where the variants are and all that stuff are going to work with your protocol, or no?
Well, this is where, you have these variants, and ideally, when they did the Human Genome Project, they go, well, geez, if we can sequence the human genome, we'll figure out the exact one gene that causes every disease. We'll go in, we'll tweak it, we'll fix it. Well, then they came out and they go, wow, this probably works really great for some of the rarest diseases in the world. But actually, it turns out it's not so much what genes you have, it's which ones get turned on and turned off.
Right.
Now, if you have a gene variant like you're talking about, that absolutely makes it impossible to get the bang for that, effort, and you can go in and flip it, fantastic. But if you still have all these other things going on that's going to make those vitamin D receptors resistant anyway, you can even have the right gene without even having a variant, to deal with, and you're not going to get the bang for your effort. And this is where it really looks like things like butyrate and this flipping re-establishing that vitamin D receptor sensitivity in the gut is such a central mechanism. I really think the only way it can really kind of fix everything, I think it makes all these receptors for all the things the body needs to function well more sensitive. Hey, my serotonin receptors aren't as sensitive as they used to be. I have serotonin, but I can't get the bang for my effort. Well, if you can optimally sensitize all these receptors for all the great things the body needs, wow, this might be one of those central mechanisms that, makes it kind of be in a position to fix everything at the same time. Now, if you have those, gene variants and you can flip them, fantastic. Ooh, does that open up the window of opportunity to then have more genes available to do the work? But then if you still have all these central mechanisms creating the resistance, it might be a little hard for a lot of people to get the full bang for their effort.
That makes sense. Now, how do you take butyrate? Is it a pill, a powder?
So it's a capsule. So butyric CalMag connected to a little bit of calcium, magnesium is a common one. There's sodium butyrate. And so they come in capsule form. Now, this is where the body is so smart, is there's only one food source of butyrate.
Broccoli.
Well, actually, this one thing that broccoli can't do. It's actually butter. And
Butter.
this is
Oh,
where
my
I say,
favorite.
oh, I mean, it's so, they kind of talk about how great it is for the gut. And like, this is why, because it's the only food source.
Oh my goodness.
But this is where I also think that every culture in the world uses some kind of butter.
Hmm.
If it's not cow's milk butter, it's goat's butter. Here you got in the Himalayas, yak butter. Every culture uses butter because it is inherently so great for the gut, but because of the butyrate content. And so, like, we see a ton of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, the cutest little 2-year-olds. Oh my goodness,
Oh,
with a knee the size of a basketball. Oh my gosh. Well, they're too young sometimes to even swallow capsules. So we just go, okay, put butter, ideally butter,
grass fed. Yeah,
put it on top of everything. It always makes everything taste better anyway.
of course.
Cook it, just put it on butter. So the little kiddies just start getting all this butter. When they're old enough, we love to have them taken in a capsule form, which is, even higher dose. And oh my gosh, does the gut love it? But because that's such a central mechanism, including when you combine it with the vitamin D and the probiotics, oh my gosh, does this just start the body moving in the right direction, getting at these central mechanisms that no matter what health issue you have, you're moving forward, you're moving in the right direction.
This is all very heartening and and simple, really. If we can start with those three simple things. And I want to say I'm a big supplement believer, let's put it that way. Vitamin D should be D3 and it should be a fat soluble version. Don't take a dry powder form of the pill or a capsule. It has to be a gel cap. The butyrate you've explained, and probiotics come in so many different forms. Do you have a favorite?
I like to alternate every 3 months with a live one. We use one called High Flora. And then I love to combine it every 3 months, alternating with a spore based. So we use one called Megaspore. Ideally, there's thousands and thousands of good bacteria in our gut. Probiotics help build up the good guys. Well, you don't want to build some good guys and not others. They love that balance. And so you'll build some with one type of probiotic, build some with the other. And if you kind of keep alternating, you tend to keep everybody in the good place all at the same time.
Okay. Now, I know you've written a book, but I think it's for nurse practitioners, which we may have some listeners, not for the general public. Is that correct?
Well, it is more of a technical book, but it's really the basics. But also it's the science. I thought it was important that people know it's not one person's opinion. So even though it's written in a way that non-medical people can go, oh, that's where autoimmune disease comes from. Oh, that's the test I can run on the blood test in my local clinic or hospital. Oh, he actually just told me how I can actually order my own tests, like going online and ordering, and they're even cheaper than going through my insurance. This is exactly how exactly you interpret the lab results. Well, this lab came back with this result. How do I interpret it? And that's a challenge for medical people to interpret it as well as they should.
Mm.
Then, so what supplement do I use to fix that? I give you exact supplements. So it is kind of for non-medical folks also.
Oh, good.
Though we have a new free online course, email course, that is 7 emails. Each one we take a deep dive. People can access it through medicalbilldetox.com. Because when you start getting these chronic health issues, it's like imaging study after imaging study, doc after doc, try this after that. Oh my goodness, can that put a dent in your medical bill budget? And so we take a deep dive. So like week 1, we talk about cortisol, how important it is to create the calm, how to do it, what supplements to use. The second week is its vitamin D receptor resistance, its impact, how do you fix it with this foundational triad. Week 3, we talk about these infections that drive chronic disease and how to get rid of them. Week 4, we talk about foods and how some foods can bug you in a sneaky way, and how you can figure out which ones do it. And then, how that will put you in a position to start fixing stuff. So it's a really, how do I fix this myself? Of course, we want somebody in every community eventually knows how to do this, medical practitioner. But at least until that time comes, people really have to have a good idea how to do it themselves. And if you can dive in deep each week with these concepts and go, oh, yeah, and then, oh, yeah, that's how you fix it, really, you get the body in position to fix this. And that's when the body goes, hey, I've been waiting to do this for so many decades. I know how to fix your issue. I've been waiting to fix it, but this stuff has gotten in the way. Give me a shot. Just give me a shot. Get the stuff out. Well, this is when you do this kind of stuff, including, getting out of nature, helps human health and well-being through resetting cortisol. It's like, well, you do that kind of stuff, you get rid of this thing that's getting in the way of your body fixing, the body goes, hot dog, I've been waiting 7 decades to do this. I'm going to fix this. And people go, oh my goodness, I've had this since I was 6 years of age. It's gone. I'm
Wow.
84. This is great.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great for somebody who had something for that long?
I had somebody with tinnitus a couple of years ago. She's 84. She comes with all these health issues. She's been getting more and more each decade. And she has tinnitus. And I go, oh, tell me about the tinnitus. Oh, well, I just got used to that. I've had it since I was 6 years of age.
Oh,
It's not my worst problem because I got used to it. I'm like, oh, okay. But I knew it was connected to everything else. Like you said, everything's connected, right? And so she comes in. We made a couple changes the first visit because we knew we had to do a couple of things like let's start creating some calm. Let's do a couple of other things. She comes back the next time when we start going over the lab results. But before we go to the lab results, I say, so we made these couple changes. Anything getting better? Well, actually, my energy's better. I'm sleeping a little better. I only used to poop twice a week. I'm actually pooping every day. And I'm like, all right. And then I go, so what about the tinnitus? Ring in your ear. She goes, oh my gosh, it's gone. I've had that since I was 6 years of age. And I'm looking at my piece of paper. Going, yeah, I knew that.
Oh,
and she goes,
Lord.
oh my gosh. And I'm like, yep, everything is connected. And your body has been sitting there for 78 years trying, knowing how to fix this, ready to fix it. Just got to be given a chance. Here she gave her body a chance, even took care of that.
Wow. Now, do you work with people virtually or just where your office is?
Yeah. So we used to, my clinic's in a place that nationally and internationally, people travel from all over the world. And so it was really easy back in the day when people would have to come see us at least the first time in person, and then we could do things virtually. Nowadays, with telehealth, we see so many people virtually, and that's all we ever see. Because really, truly, we're not really doing any physical examinations. We just want to go, okay, tell me what's going on. We basically know where chronic disease, autoimmune disease comes from. So we kind of already have a sense of what problems people have. Then we do the testing if we can. We love to test, so we don't have to guess. And we can do it all just virtually, from anywhere.
That's awesome. So if anybody listening is interested in having the expertise of Dr. Billstrom and his team, his website is drdavidbillstrom.com. And it says even book an appointment. So I guess you can book right through the website. Yeah.
Well, we'll connect you to the place where you can book.
Well, this has been absolutely mind-blowing. I'm just down to 3 things now. I have to look up what butyrate is the thing I'm going to take and add it to my vitamin D and my probiotic, which I do take. But I didn't know about mixing them up every few months. So I'll keep that, put that in on my radar as well. Anything you want to leave the audience with? You've been really great.
Well, something we talked about before is that just because you've had something for a long time doesn't mean it can't go away, but also especially with women, getting this estrogen dominance taken care of is so important. Not only because you really don't want these menstrual hormonal things, you don't really want the red without calm things, but getting this really nice balance, creating calm, getting progesterone levels to come up, getting your gut healthy so you can get rid of old toxic estrogens, but also then because you're fixing cortisol, fixing this entire hormone production symphony, you got your estrogen production, estrogen progesterone production, and other hormones in a really good place and well balanced. And that's ultimately what you want to do, because with all this autoimmune stuff, we now know there's an autoimmune component to heart attacks and strokes and dementia and
Really?
Alzheimer's and osteoporosis.
Wow.
Even 70% of all autism is one particular autoimmune disease. If you get the gut healthy, vitamin D receptors, cortisol reset, you get this estrogen dominance in a good place. And my next book, that's about 80% done already, is all going to be about estrogen dominance. Well, then you're not only in a position to not get cancer and autoimmune disease, but all these diseases that actually have immune system components like dementia, Alzheimer's, heart attack, stroke, osteoporosis. Like, you're actually putting yourself in a good position to fix all and prevent all those guys too.
One-stop shopping.
Really, fixing central mechanism. It's like everything's connected. Everything's connected.
Everything's connected. I love it. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that we've had a chance to get all your great information.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
You're welcome. And people, I'll be back next week. Stay well till then. Hey everybody, I have a favor to ask. If you enjoyed this episode or any of the other episodes that you listen to, please leave a review on your favorite site for listening to podcasts.
You can also leave a comment on my website, where you'll find the podcast at the podcast tab or under any of the guest podcast episode pages. Thanks. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate you. Be well till next time.